Hello everyone, this is Andy again. It's been a few weeks. I'm sorry that I haven't been able to give you some updates, but let me show you a little bit of what I did in this past few weeks. I will tell you that this video is going to be a little bit long because I tackled some icons that I am just going to tell you right now. They made me think a lot. We tackled 3 major applications in this past redesign, and we worked a lot with we worked with LapPlot, with Mail, with Minuet, and let me make sure that I got them all in my head right. And yeah, some user ones, and let me tell you that was difficult because, and actually some media buttons as well. So let's just go through the changes very quickly. As you can see, we made some changes on some of this app right here. And for the magnet icon, I sort of gave it a more consistent look, as we have a few other icons that are angled like that. For this icon for a playlist, I decided that it made more sense to make it this way because on the previous one, it was done more like in the sense of a document. And I don't know that screams a playlist, right? Then comes a variation on the Wi-Fi icon, a filter variation, an upload variation, which I actually decided to make it this way. It seems a lot more simple than before, so I'm focusing on this icon right here. And then came the media icons, which was, a little bit difficult, but I did my best. I think we're establishing that this look means a playlist plus some of the jobs that are running on the background. For the zoom icons, this is something that, actually was recently debated and in our VDG channel. And one thing that came out of that is that we don't think maybe that the current icons represent the idea very well, as far as, scaled up or double, triple, quadruple the size of zooming. And we use these icons a lot because they are little shortcuts that avoid users having to click many times to get the desired level of magnification. So in my interpretation, I felt like the previous icons didn't quite show the zoom that we're talking about. And instead, what I did is I brought back the idea of the magnifying glass, but this time we're going to put numbers inside so that they represent the number of the scale factor that you're going to use. And I think what came out of that was a little bit more simple, easier to see. And this is the result right here. Then we started seeing, let me check if this is correct. Yeah, these are the LapPlot icons, and boy, oh boy, this was difficult. But I did my best. I think one thing that was clear to me is that LapPlot is not an easy type of application to sort of bring to users and then sort of show via icons what LapPlot can do. But there were many aspects of the previous icons that I try to keep because I'm assuming that the previous author also wrestled with this and they came to good conclusions. So just more than anything, I think with LapPlot, I just went for standardization and try to keep ideas mostly the same, but also with the modern twist that we're trying to give them and with the thickness changes that we're looking for. So this is sort of what came out. Of course, this is not perfect. I myself, as I'm going through this, I'm thinking in the back of my head that there is a lot that I need to change here. But for now, this is my proof of concept. So these are some tables, these are some changes when it comes to, positioning and moving around the interface. And instead of having these arrows, for example, I made them blocks as you work with the data. Then came the text icon, and I changed the database in the book looking icons because the previous ones, I don't think they struck me as we're speaking of databases, we're speaking of data sets. And so I try to give them a more familiar look of a worksheet, which is what actually LapPlot uses. For the icons that represent linear scales, this was a bit tricky, but one thing that was clear to me is that there was no need for us to kind of keep these jagged lines here. I felt like the friendliness of that could have been different, and we needed to simplify shapes. And so with that in mind, I created these variations on the right. And let me show you back to the next line what I did here. And again, I consulted a lot of references and LapPlot itself to understand what these lines mean. And in that, I also try to find the most standardized version of that idea that I could find, because we needed to keep consistency. And this is one thing that I kind of was not getting from the previous icon set on LapPlot. So hopefully users who are heavy into LapPlot, please let me know. I would like to hear your thoughts, but this is kind of what I came up with. When I was testing for this, I could tell that it was a lot easier to understand and interpret what I was looking at, and easing the curves made it a lot more understandable. Even though it may not be quite as accurate, it represents the main basic idea. As you can see on the left, sort of the ideas are a bit lost in my mind, and that's probably not what we want, especially when you're trying to go for speed. So then there were some movement icons, and again, zooming into the right, into the left, into the up or down, or along the X or Y axis lines. That's what I was trying to interpret here. And at the end of the day, what we mean is we want to zoom to the bottom, top, or left or right area. So that's the most basic idea. And that's what I reworked here, keeping the same idea of as you can see at the top, keeping the same idea of the zooming icon. Then we continued working with some layer icons. For the camera icons that you see here, these two, one is supposed to be kind of a distortion representation here, and the other one is basically the zoom. And with that, I thought, hey, with the icons that we have right now, I'm not getting the feel this is about cameras, this is about images. And so I try to bring that back by creating these two icons. Then we have the copyright icon and a few others. For example, this one is supposed to represent a dark table, and it went from this circle with a half black to this. I think it drives the idea more clearly. Then others kind of pretty much stayed the same. The link icon we have changed to be more standard. I consulted a lot of images to come to this, and this seems to be a more acceptable or more up-to-date kind of shape. The previous one sort of is almost there, but again, we have to remember that most of the Breeze icons were done at a time when a lot of the conventions around what is usable for users, what is understood for users, for mobile, for like the new gamut of applications that came after, the first mobile operating systems, have changed. And so I imagine that many people found inspiration in our icons and then created theirs based on that and simplified the shape. So similar idea. Then we have like a font icon. And here I try to not go so much for the pluses and the minus because they're so small, they're not always understood. So instead, I just wanted to give it like a more stylized look to the F and to signify font. Then we have some variations on the user icon, which I redid. For the plus icon, I just basically went with the pill shape. With the circle shape. And then, actually, for the minus, I forgot to, there we go. Now it's good. All right, so for the minus or for the remove button, we have that idea. I also had the opportunity to create the heart icon, which is, that tells you have done your job right. And so I gave it a little bit of thickness, better angles. I took actually a long time making that icon. For the clip icon, I just simplified it a little bit more since the shapes are a little bit thicker. And then came the mail icons, which for these, I had to basically simplify. But the main thing that I did was to find a shape for the mail or the letter envelope icon that needed to be just right. And I consulted a few icons, what seemed best, and I just went with a very similar shape to what we have today. And as you can see, these are the results. Some ideas have changed. I'm moving now to this line, and I'll show you right here. So for the most part, we keep the mail idea, but some of the icons have changed. For example, these are the sent or read icons. These are the sent icons. These are the important icons, or the ones that need attention. These are the deleted icons, checked icons. Checked mail, open mail. These are the read mail. And then these ones are the ones that are important. And I keep those two right there the same because we're just trying to signify that they need attention. So mark as unread and read icons are very similar. Then we have, the sent icons. This is the queue, basically. So we changed that a little bit because it used to be something like this. And it sort of didn't signify a lot what was going on in there. And then the receive more mail, which is, I believe, this one in this case. And so you see how the shape just sort of didn't lend itself very well. So for this one, we're just keeping consistent and we're using the envelope icon. Then we have these few others. I'm not too sold on this, but this is the answer that I have right now. For some of these icons, the representations are rather interesting. So for example, this icon right here is called Mail Reply Custom. This is probably something that not a lot of email clients use today, but it needed to be represented in some way. Maybe there are a couple of applications that still use it. So I went with color changes rather than changing the shape. I think that made more sense to me, given how intricate the meaning is. Then, send queue, send mail also changed. So instead of having this sort of check mark icon, whatever, I decided that it made more sense to have a more standard icon that represents sending a message. Then came the other part, which was a little pretty interesting here. You see these icons on the left. These are supposed to represent signatures, mail signatures. And one thing that I am not getting from the current icon set is that they don't necessarily scream signature to me when I look at them. They sort of seem to have like the envelope shape and then a pencil, but what is that about? And so what I went with is I'm experimenting here, but I basically created an icon that represents a signature and try to represent the states of those signatures through color. Try to keep the same idea that we had before. And so, for example, this is a signature that's validated. This is a signature halfway validated. This is a good signature, and this is a not so good signature. So hopefully that makes sense. Then came a couple of more icons. These are map icons, and I changed them up because if you notice, we have these 4 icons right here. All of them are about maps, but the only one currently that is sort of telling me that it's about a map is this one. And so I was like thinking, okay, how can I make them connect more with the map idea? And today, many icons have this shape, sort of like the paper version of maps. People relate to that, and I turned it into this icon. And then for the globe icon, I standardized it and made it straight up. And then I created the same view, but from the top of the world. So I think to me that's more relatable than what we had before. Then we have this icon right here, just basically stayed the same. And soon after that came another truck slamming straight into my creative psyche. And then came the playback icons. These are kind of intense, because one of the criticisms, I think one of the pieces of feedback we have received so far about the current icons is that the current icons are very big and they don't need to be. So sort of they look gigantic in a 22 pixel grid. And when I looked at them at the originals, I can tell that they were almost touching all the edges. That means they were enlarged inside the container. And I don't know if there was a good reason at the time for that, but it sort of doesn't follow the general idea. So for these icons, as you can see, we still have sort of disk or CD oriented imagery here. And I'm changing that because I don't think we, like in our day and age, we don't necessarily look into that anymore. But so this icon turned from this to this. The disk icon turned to this, a little more symbolic. And then for the playback icons, I worked really hard to get the shapes just right to make them comparable. Even if you notice, both of these icons, left and right, are on a 24 pixel grid because I enlarged them before I started working on them. And the 24 pixel on the right looks smaller and more balanced than the ones on the left. So hopefully that translates to really good, clear playback applications like Elisa, like Amarok, like, whatever podcast application you may have. Then came a little bit more of the fine detail of playlist. So I try to show playlist in this 3-line idea with a plus, with a regular playback, with play line by line, basically, shuffle, repeat, shuffle a series of albums, and then came like a playlist shuffle. And if you notice, I'm keeping the icon the same for shuffle and playlist shuffle, because in this day and age, whatever context you're showing the user in the app, that's what you're going to shuffle. And the app is smart enough to say, oh, you're in this playlist, therefore you shuffle this. So I think we're trying to go with that idea because it makes things a little bit more simple. Then there are a couple of other changes here that, again, I kept similar icons because they represent similar ideas. For the stop shuffling or repeating, instead of using the X, which means more like delete something, I'm using the cross line, which mostly means, negate that action. All right, so then comes the skip, and these are just repeats of what I did before. Again, more balanced looks. Playlist, start from the top, a couple of icons on users, and then a couple of ideas around messages, landmarks, and then came Minuet with music. And I try to simplify this. If you can tell, I'm not done. I'm still working on it. These two right here, the metronome and then the scale, because the current ones that we have, they work, except that they allow for too much detail that sort of makes things get lost. And so instead, I just went straight for the most representative thing that I could think of, and it's just the notes, right? At the end of the day, the partiture is not as important to be represented as the rest. And then came these 4 icons right here, which I asked in the VDG channel about. And these are icons that, because the application was updated that was using them, keyword quiz, they are actually no longer used. So these are essentially deprecated because they don't have an application that's using them. So, we can save some space in our icon pack and maybe not account for these in a future pack. These are some of the trimmings that we're probably going to have to do with some of these icons because of the passage of time, right? Icons that were used then are not used now. Anyway, that's the update for now. I hope you enjoy, and as always, your feedback is welcome. Thank you so much.